In this episode, we're going to meet Sam and Julian from Batch London. We're going to talk about how they're trying to change how people buy suits to live a more sustainable life, and how they're creating a culture and a community that align with those values, and how they collaborate with others to grow their brand. This episode was recorded in their London Spitalfields retail store, and it was shared in front of a live audience. Hope you enjoy it and you'll get a lot from it. Let's jump into the show.
Obviously, really good-looking, smart chap. Can you tell us a bit about the guys you were before starting Batch London? So don't give us too much about that, but everything before it. Who wants to go first? Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my sort of entrepreneurial career at university. I was at Newcastle, and whilst I was up there, started a little events company, and that quite quickly told me that I didn't want to work for anyone else, and I wanted to go do my own thing and be my own boss. So when I left uni, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? How do I make that a reality? And I was, in my head, going down the project management route, and working in project management was a way to do that. But it's one of those jobs that you can't get without experience. You can't get experience without jobs, so you're stuck. Yeah. And at that time, one of my friends' boyfriends had just started this drinks brand called Punchy. And it was pre-launch, and he asked me if I wanted to come and help out over summer and work at some festivals. It's like, perfect, great, absolutely. Went to Taste of London, it went really well, and then I ended up working there for 5 years. Went from sales to sales and ops to head of ops, and I worked as head of ops for 3 or 4 years, which was basically the perfect position to learn all of the skills you need to learn to go and start your own thing properly. And all the basic stuff, like how do you do a cash flow, or when do you register for VAT? So that was sort of my entryway into the fun stuff, what we're doing now. Yeah, I get to the boring jobs, basically.
Morning, everybody. I'm Julian. Sam's above half.
Yeah.
Business, not romantic. Where should I start? Yeah, so we went to Newcastle University together. I studied business and German. I was fortunate enough to have a year out in Berlin where I worked for a startup for 6 months of it. So that gave me a bit of an early understanding of what it's like working within a small startup community, especially in Berlin. It's thriving there. At the end of uni, I joined an underwear company based in Newcastle called Oddballs, which is an underwear company for men, women, children, and it raises awareness of testicular cancer. So it's got a really important cause behind it, but very much functions as a business. Then we have a charity as well. I joined it when there was only 3 staff. There's now 70. I left Oddballs pretty much a few weeks ago, actually, so just officially full-time with that. It was based in Newcastle, or it is based in Newcastle. I moved down to London to work independently about 4 years ago, so worked from home before COVID happened, so core work from home's a thing. So I've always had a very autonomous role, the ability to do my oddball stuff in a short amount of time and focus on something else. So when Sam approached me with the idea of creating a casual suit business, which we'll come on to, I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could do my day job and also start building a business at the same time. Interestingly as well, I've gone from a fashion brand, so to speak, which is predominantly in D2C, manufacturing in China, not particularly sustainable or not really considering its sustainability credentials enough, kind of flipping that almost 100% into a brand which is nearly driven by being sustainable. So I've got both ends of the spectrum, and it's where I'm at.
Thanks, chaps. So, what? Casual survey just jumped up? Like, what? How did you get the idea for Batch London?
I think as a business, we kind of had like 2 eureka moments. The first was really early doors where I wanted a casual suit, just couldn't find any good ones, and quickly realised that there weren't any on the market. But the way that the world was changing, and we've gone from this sort of very formal in the office 5 days a week to a little more hybrid in and out the office, and the way that you dress to work had changed. But there's still that need of wanting to look smart and still be comfortable. So that was sort of the first eureka moment. And then the second was when we started looking into the fashion industry. And whilst we all know fast fashion's bad, then you might realise how bad it is until you actually start looking at it. And we quite quickly realised that it's in a really dire place. So we had sort of 2 driving forces there to go and work with and work out how we then go and tell that story and fulfill both those 2 things of how we take a customer through that journey. So those are probably our two moments that drove us to do what we're doing today and get to the position that we are today.
So what are the issues, hurdles, constraints that you're seeing in the fashion space? I think there's a statement that gets thrown around quite a bit, is that fashion is like the second largest polluter to the planet. Can you give us a couple of pointers that really stood out to you as like we can change that?
Yeah, I mean, when you start looking at the stats, you find out that 6 in 10 items of clothing that are made end up in landfill within a year, which makes no sense at all. And then you dig a bit deeper, and the second stat that really shaped what we're doing is that 70% of fashion waste comes from upstream production. So before clothing's even got into the consumer's hands, it's going to landfill. And the big driver of that issue is you get your big corps who have multiple seasons a year, your big fashion brands. They're guessing what styles they're going to land. They're having to create loads and loads of styles so they can keep up with the other brands making loads and loads of styles. And if they don't land, which quite often they don't, they'll get discounted. If that doesn't sell, then it goes straight to landfill. Alongside returns, which is another key issue in what we're doing, is people buy stuff and send it back. But when your cost of good is so low that it costs you more to repurpose and repackage it than it does to throw it away, you've got a pretty toxic cycle. So for us, we realised that the key issue was the way that we consume fashion, and we spotted a gap that we could change that and try and encourage people to wait for their things to be made, that patience is a virtue, and as a result, it means we only make exactly as many things as we need, and we cut out those two really key issues.
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, for obviously all
That's that.
patched up. Can you tell us about Batch LDN? Give us the animator bit.
So we couldn't find a decent casual suit. The timing was obviously very interesting as post-COVID, the need for the traditional suit has certainly changed. So there was perhaps an opportunity there. And as Sam said, when you set up a fashion brand, you have to look in ways in which you can be sustainable. There are lots of ways. So we wanted to pinpoint one thing that we thought we could have meaningful impact on, or, try and change the culture. And that was our culture of over-consuming clothes. So we decided to make them to order. I don't know, Sam made that fairly clear, but I can just go into a bit more. So if you only produce exactly what's been ordered, we aren't creating any clothes that are ending up in landfill. 6 out of 10 items that are made every single year end up in landfill within 12 months. So there's a huge issue that we all sort of know about, but the opportunity to shop sustainably isn't really that accessible for us, or it is, but there's other deciding factors, there's price points, etc. that come into it. So we wanted to create an actionable solution to people to try shopping more sustainably. So how that works is we release our suits in limited capacity batches, hence Batch LDN. So there's a small window of opportunity to buy into the batch. This was our third collection. It was on sale for 3 weeks. We then place the order in one batch with our manufacturer, and then arrives with our customers 8 weeks later. Over that 8-week period, take customers on a journey showing them how their suit is made and who's actually making it through behind-the-scenes videos from our factory in Portugal. So as a customer, you go on this really special, unique experience seeing how your garments are made. It's not something that you would really experience anywhere else in the fashion industry. And we hope as a consequence, when your clothes do arrive with you, you're going to care for them a lot more. You're going to buy into this idea of helping Batch slow fashion down. So that's the big picture for it. Our big vision and mission as a brand is to be the go-to made-to-order brand in the world. So once we've proven concept further that people are willing to pay for something and wait for it for the betterment of our planet, the suit is essentially a hero product for us to build from, and there's no reason why we can't create other garments on our Batch model.
So how did you go about getting those first customers to start to tell that story, for them to buy into that vision? Because many of us want to scale our sustainable solutions. We know that there's a huge amount of consumers who are like, they're doing it wrong. Come this side. So how do you communicate? How do you get those first customers to first validate that it wasn't just about you two? You two were yeah. Tell us that first 0 to 1%.
Well, your low-hanging fruit is always family and friends. Particularly when you're doing something, you're telling people you have to wait 8 weeks for something to be made, but you've got no reviews. People haven't had a chance to see the suit on people. You've got no influencers. So the only people that trust you at that stage are your family and friends, and it's probably through grit and teeth anyway.
Yeah. They always say there's like the triple F round, isn't there?
Well, yeah.
Family, friend, and fools.
And fools, exactly. It was pretty much family and friends and no fools. But no, that we sold 80 suits in our first batch, and that was enough to prove that there's a market for this, even though it's kind of a bit of a lie because it's family and friends. But to get us to go and do the process, to show people the journey, And what we actually found, which was quite surprising to us, is that in our second batch of suits, we had 15% of those people come back and buy another one. So that was
1.5 or 5.0?
1.5, which for a suit, it's not something that you buy loads of all the time. So that was within a 6-month window. And we were quite shocked at that. But for us, that gave us loads of validation that what we're selling is actually good and that it's a nice product, so people want to wear it and they want to wear more of it. So that was our first stage. But I think I've always been told, and it rings true, your first 1,000 customers are your hardest to win. And once you've got those, then you start to have that ripple effect of word of mouth, of people buying into it more, people showing it to other people and telling that story. But back to the storytelling, we did a load of market testing to work out whether we put the main highlight on the versatility of a casual suit and show that it's something you can wear in lots of different ways to lots of different occasions and supplements everything else in your wardrobe, or do we nail into the sustainability and have that as the lead message and the best as a secondary? And what we found when we did our market testing, that whilst people care about sustainability, and if you ask the question how much you care about sustainability out of 5, 85% of the respondents put 5 out of 5, the remaining 15 put 4 out of 5. So everyone cares. So then you ask people when you come to make your purchase decision, what factors influence it, and in order of influence, and you put price, quality, speed of delivery, customer service, sustainability, 2 others, I can't remember what they are, but sustainability slid down to 4 or 5 on the list for almost everybody. So our insight that we took from that was that whilst people care about sustainability, there are other factors that come above it, or they don't quite know how to buy into it. So we decided to leave with the versatility, showing people how it would fit into their lifestyle. And then once they've engaged in the brand, to then be like, by the way, you're also doing this great thing for sustainability, and this is the problem you're solving. So if you start the other way around and you lead with, here's a massive sustainability problem, people tend to put their head in the sand, they don't really want to hear it, and they just switch off at that point. So you have to show them something else first, show them why the product's better, and then bring them back to what the problem they're solving, and then that starts those ripple effects, I think.
Was it always your approach to do that kind of customer validation, those questionnaires, those surveys, ahead of trying to just figure out yourself? Or
I think you lean into your gut feel, and then you take customer surveys with a pinch of salt, but they can almost support you. I think we came up with 2 slightly different directions, but they were pretty similar. And the customer survey led us into which one was more important than the other. I think if you go in with like no idea of what you're trying to get out of it, you're just lost, and you get further lost and confused, and you've got to work out what you're willing to change and what you're not, and therefore base those questions off of that, I would say.
has there been any lessons learned in going from family and friends to completely cold new customers that knew nothing about you? Like, what were some of the lessons and things that, I think, what were the struggles first?
Good question. Customers are difficult to deal with in comparison to family and friends. No, once you move out, your family and friends, you've got a real business, haven't you? You're dealing with real people who are making real impressions of what you're doing, sharing real life reviews, creating real life content. Sam and I, we only launched last May, so we've been going just over a year. That was batch 1, and we've done batch 2 and 3 this year. So we're really still finding our feet, and we're really just finding new customers. That's why it's fantastic to have a physical store, because people will come in, meet Sam and I, we can explain how the concept works. I think like family and friends can only get you so far, right? It's when you get real customers telling their friends really good responses about what batch is. Have you heard about this? I've got this fantastic suit. It's really sustainable. So I guess it's the going from a proving concept element of your business to actually managing and running a real business when you've got real customers wearing your product.
Yeah, and having that time with someone to communicate the story, them to buy into you guys with personality, into the community, and actually see it physically, right? There's a barrier. There's a reason why we do these physical events for kind community rather than just jump on Zoom. There's so much connection you can happen.
You need, yeah.
And, you know, obviously the doors are locked, so you can't leave without buying a suit. But
yeah, I was just going to add to what Julian's saying, leading on from what you were saying. When you've got quite a complicated story and you're moving from friends and family to customers that are new to the brand, it's really hard to get people engaged for a long period of time to completely understand what you're doing.
Fantastic sustainable water brand, but for some reason they hate it stupidly high.
yeah, additional.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really, really hard to get people to engage. So something that we're working on at the moment is how do we simplify that model? How do we simplify that communication? That for those that are really engaged, that want to discover more, they can go and discover the right things. But as a first thought call, can you give people enough information on the time that they're engaged for them to understand what you're doing and buy into it? And that's something that we're still in the process of feeding out. And I think that's always a challenge with any business, with any sustainable business as well, because there's always a reason behind something and you need a bit more explanation. And
Yeah. Well, you'll figure these things out as you run tests, like what we found in our growth, and it's something that you guys have landed on kind of like automatically, is that children and animals in your advertising or in your marketing can like capture more engagement. So with the dogs being here, it's a good feel. but actually it's true. Like we ran like huge amount of spend on paid ads, and the ones that contained like happy smiley kids or dogs and cats got more click-throughs. That was obviously if it relates to your business in some sort of way. I'm not just saying if you run a consultancy company and run a children, but in this way, like
the biggest brands in the world reshape memes.
Yeah, exactly. So we often find that the brands that have a feeling, emotion, like people behind it, real life scenarios behind the brand and the product, tend to convert more engagement. Or people stick with them. They want even if it's that extra 2 or 3 seconds you need through stopping them scrolling, you've then got their attention to then open them up to the rest of the world. So you're on batch 3. Tell us like how it works. Do you have like a maximum amount that you want to produce every batch? Do you limit people? Like how does that batch process actually work?
We aim to sell 200 suits per batch at the moment, so keep it relatively exclusive. We want you to feel special wearing a batch suit. We want it to stand for something. We hope that will scale and grow. At the moment, there's quite a large dependency for us on this physical retail space. That's why we have it. I'm sure you can all probably relate. Acquiring customers online at the moment is, mission impossible. So having a physical space where people can come and try the product on is really essential. We're flipping the script on the way that we currently consume fashion, right? The fact that you have to pay for something and wait for it is pretty unusual. So try to do that as a new fashion brand with a relatively luxury product that costs $395. You're going to want to try it on and know that you like it before paying $395 and waiting 8 weeks, right? So,
and it's important to you guys as well, because you don't want someone to spend $395 online, get it doesn't fit, send it. Yeah.
We need to avoid returns at all costs, really. Thankfully, we've only really had 1 or 2 since we started, so we're doing something right from a product perspective. But yeah, how it works. So we're actually potentially changing our model or looking to. So at the moment, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to create this huge amount of hype to sell 200 suits within 2 to 3 weeks to place that order with our manufacturer, right? And at the moment, we're not giving our customers enough time to work out whether they want to buy it, and we're not giving ourselves enough time to market it. So we finished batch 2. We then had basically 2 months to create and launch this shop, finish a raise, market batch 3, sample it, shoot it, and then persuade people that they want to buy it.
produce batch 2.
Produce batch 2. Ship batch 2 to customers. So this current model of like this drop model, like creating this hype and demand for a product that potentially isn't there if you haven't earned it, right? We're doing a pretty good job, but putting too much pressure on ourselves. So how batch 4 is going to work, like our autumn winter collection essentially. So we'll be launching that in November. Rather than having X amount of weeks to be able to buy it, we're going to be placing smaller batches with our manufacturer every month essentially. So batch 4 will be on sale for autumn winter till March, April time. So you can buy it at any point. There'll be 4 different colors, and then we'll place them in sort of micro batches. So there'll probably be a slight hit on our margin or a slight increase in the cost price of the suits, but it'll give us the time needed in order to run a bit more of a sustainable business, because at the moment it hasn't been that sustainable for us in terms of work rate and that. Yeah.
Stress. Yeah. Elation, stress, elation.
Yeah.
Burnout.
Yeah. And importantly, it gives the customer enough time to work out, like, I don't know how many times you have to realize or recognize a brand or see a brand before you buy it, but it's a lot, especially something like ours. So changing that model to facilitate that is the direction that we're heading in.
And just simplify that message as well. You know, as a customer, I think you assume that customers are really smart and they see everything that you put out. But in reality, even if they see everything, they don't take it all in. So you've got people being like, is it available? Is it not available? Can I buy it now? When can I buy it? And you're like, I've told you that about 15 times over the last 2 months. People just don't get it. So And that's a lesson on our behalf. That's not really a customer's fault. That's more like simplify that messaging, give people really easy bite-sized information, because you can almost guarantee they're not going to take in, even half of what we're putting out there.
Yeah. We often, as founders, right, or marketers, we kind of don't realize how busy our customers are. We just think that they're waiting for us, like a obedient dog. They're lapping up everything we dish them. It doesn't happen that way. But also the algorithms, like social media, when we put our content out, if you put it out organically, your maximum reach is about even at best 5%, right? So those algorithms are now restricting the content that you put out that once did reach your consumers. Even if you put out 50 pieces of content a day, your customers might only seen one, right? So 1, 2. So you've got to be aware that, that you've got to be consistent, you've got to show up, you've got to deliver what you say, but also a confused mind doesn't buy. So the more simple you can be, the clearer and the more conversions you're likely to get. Actually, one of the things I picked up on looking at the work that you've done over the last year or so, I actually featured this at Reset Connect. We were doing a growth session. I told you I was going to do this, but what I love about what you've created is it factors a couple of on what I call the consideration equation. So what considerations do consumers take into account to buy something, right? It's like dream outcome. Like I want to look good. In this case, it's like your customers want to look good. They want to wear the suit as much as possible when they can, still look good, feel good. They look good. It's also sustainable. That's a caveat. Then, okay, how likely am I to achieve that success if I buy a Batch London suit? And what you do quite clearly on your site is the reviews. You put out a lot of content. You host events where loads of really cool people are wearing the suits. You did a feature recently with a musician or a producer. Yeah. People look up to that person. They see their favorite person wearing it. So the likelihood of success of that dream outcome, yes, you tick that. Now on the other side, you've got time delay. That's something that you actually add. Like everyone else wants 2-day delivery. You're 6 weeks, 8 weeks delivery period, and you want my money up front. So how do you lower that while raising the top dream outcome? And your sense of urgency and scarcity kind of counteract that, because you sell in batches, driving customers to go, right, I must get this suit in this period of time, and I'm comfortable with that. So I loved how you pulled that together. So well done now. I don't know if it was meant or you figured that out in your years of entrepreneurship, but it's fantastic. What are some of the hurdles, other than the piece where you have forced yourself into this peak and trough wave, which you seem to have seen? What other hurdles are you facing at the moment, and how do you plan to overcome them?
It's a good question. I think the big hurdle is acquiring new customers, getting new eyes on brand. So we're trying to change the perception of Batch. There's this great literary theorist called Roland Barthes, and I think this back in 1930s. He did a study on the fashion industry and what makes people buy clothes, and broke it down into 3 sections. So you've got the material, which is what clothing is made out of. Got the immaterial, which is its shape and its structure and its design, and then you've got what it stands for. And I think the first 2 bits we've got right. The third bit takes a little longer to come by, but you essentially want people to feel something and they put the suit on, or to buy it because they've seen someone else look cool in it. So we're working really hard to elevate our brand, that when people put it on, they feel part of something bigger, they feel they represent something. So doing that through community, we call it a counterculture community of people that both want to look better, so they look good and do better simultaneously, but also using our suits to get on influencers. At the moment, we're doing a mini doctor series, which is what you were just talking about, where we're highlighting inspirational creatives and their connection back to Batch, and giving that elevation behind the clothing when makes people want to buy into it. So that takes time for that to happen. Culture change takes time as well. Ironically, the waiting 8 weeks is the least amount of drawback that we have, other than in the summer periods when you get, unfortunately, mostly blokes that come in for a wedding that's that weekend and like, I need a suit now. They're like, you're an idiot, why didn't you bolt earlier? So that's our only real barrier from that perspective. But that's not something that we're willing to chase. It's not something we want to change. And it creates quite an interesting conversation when that does happen. But then acquiring these new customers is probably our biggest hurdle at the moment. Otherwise, it feels like things are going pretty well. I think probably our best failure since we started was setting our targets too high. So we set ourselves really ambitious targets, didn't hit them, really bad for your sort of team morale. You're like, God, that went really badly. But what it meant is that we strive to be way better than we would have done had we set more realistic targets. So it's not something I recommend doing all the time, but as a starting point, it really gave us the sort of drive to kick on and push and do better, and that's why we ended up with a big shock. So that, okay, what do we need to do to get to those numbers? We need to do this, this, and this. So yeah, I think those probably our hurdles.
Julian, can you share a bit more about the community building aspect? What are some of the things you do to try and cultivate that community?
Yeah, well, Sam and I both have a bit of background in events. We're both very gregarious, social people. I think meeting in person and holding events and being able to explain what you do, like Jana's doing, is essential, and you get a real feeling of being part of something, and that's very powerful in comparison to, you know, more or less anything that you can do in a marketing sphere. So we host the opportunities to host things like this. You know, we snap your hand off straight away. We've got sunglasses course tonight where you make sunglasses from scratch. We have a whiskey tasting tomorrow. We have a So Far Sounds music gig on Thursday, all in our shop, all in our space, where more or less we usually get the opportunity to explain how Batch works, which is handy. But we also get to meet like-minded people who are looking to better themselves and explore new ways of doing stuff, and that's really essential for us. So yeah, community is massive to Batch. We want the suit, as Sam said, you want to feel like you're part of something, like you have chosen to pay and wait for something for the betterment of the planet. And that's quite a powerful thing if lots of people are doing that, and that's, you know, being part of something that's changing a culture of the way that we currently consume, which is important, right?
Yeah, well, humans are community animals, aren't we? We want to be part of a group that are aligned, like-minded, that we can get on with. And if a brand can attach themselves and cultivate that feeling, and I love how you guys are building that. And isn't there something online where, are you still doing the NFT community? Like, tell us a bit more.
We dipped our toes in the digital sphere at the start, but as you can probably already tell, our message is relatively complex as it is. If you add NFTs into the space, people are like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, what? At my own brand. So we pulled the plug on that quite quickly. But it's interesting, like the digital fashion space is an opportunity to potentially be more sustainable. And that was like our initial inspiration behind it. It was like, can people try clothes on at home, and therefore we don't have to create any stock whatsoever, and they like it and buy it? So there was an opportunity there. From an NFT perspective, it's a, you know, way back to your consumers, to gift them exclusive stuff, be able to connect with them on a more digital level. So there was an opportunity there that we certainly explored for a while, and I don't think it's dead necessarily, but it's something that we're just keeping in the back burner. But as I said, early days, it was another part of our business that was adding more complexity, so we just flattened it for now. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting space that I think has a lot of potential, but not quite at the moment.
Do you know what I've loved having from this conversation? That you guys aren't afraid to share, say, some of your failures or places where you saw you dip your toe and then pull back. You're pretty open about that, and being genuine about things that you swung for. You know, ultimately you miss all the shots you don't take. And I love that you guys are trying this stuff and being open to share that with us. So thank you for that, because that then opens the door for others learning that that's okay to try, and, you know, it's not over, right? So I love that. Is there any sort of advice that you would give to someone coming into the real world that, just from your experiences of coming from, you know, maybe out of the university or from a job or whatever, but someone coming into the real world, and what advice would you tell them to ignore as well?
That's a good question. I think there's this perception that you'll find have you heard the phrase ikigai? Yeah. Ikigai is a Japanese phrase for those that don't know it, where it's basically a Venn diagram of 4 circles, and where they all intersect. It's what you're good at, what makes you money, what you enjoy doing, and what's good for the world. And if you can find a place that all 4 of those intersect, that's your ikigai, and that's your calling in life, and that's what you should do. But I feel like for lots of people, there's this huge pressure driven by social media and the way that people present themselves to find that straight away. And so people get stuck, or they move jobs too quickly, or they don't give something the right amount of time, and they think too much about it. I think it's like, just take a step back, go and try lots of different things. Find something that 2 of those things intersect or 3 of them intersect. Give that a go. If you don't enjoy it, gonna find something else to do. And I think there's sort of that big pressure that you should be making loads of money, you should be doing loads of cool stuff as soon as you leave university. And in reality, it doesn't really work like that. You know, sometimes you get lucky. I fell into Punchy and that led to my journey happening here, but that could have happened 10 years down the line. I think if you've got an entrepreneurial drive or spirit, it will come at some point in time. And if you don't, then don't worry about being an entrepreneur. Go and get a job that you love doing and let someone else lead the way in that.
Thank you.
I think just don't take things too seriously. It's so easy to be like very insular when you're running a business, and you can beat yourself up. You can be very negative in your mindset sometimes, and it's like it's just a business at the end of the day. And just take your time, relax, enjoy the process. It's essential because you often forget that element of running a business, that you're actually meant to be having fun. Otherwise, what is actually the point? So I think that's been my biggest takeaway. I think like after batch 1. We'd set such high targets, and we'd done a massive launch event. You all know and can relate to like launching your business as like the massive emotional toll. And then we only sold like 70 suits. We went to sell 200. We're both burnt out and near enough depressed. I then went and had a massive weekend at a festival with all my mates. So I came back with such amazing clarity. I was like, this doesn't matter, like, because you come so insular. What we get? Oh, I guess get a pet dog. That'll see me out. But no, I think that's my biggest takeaway so far. Is like just take it easy, take a step back, be as reflective as you possibly can be, smile, and just enjoy the process. Really,
there's only so far you can fail. Really, it's like I think we're both quite relaxed about our approach to business, which lets us go at things a lot harder because we've spoken about it, or we both know that if Batch doesn't work, the big if, like, then what's the outcome at the end of it? We'll both be fine. We'll be able to move on. It might take a bit of time to rebuild ourselves, but nothing really changes. And in effect, you've just learned God knows how much from giving it a crack. Yeah, and you'll come out the other side. You know, you could pay $100,000 to go and do an MBA, and we'll learn far more from starting a business in half as much time. So yeah, I think it's like that takes away a lot of that fear of failure.
You've got all the lessons from going through that journey, right? This is great.
Get you the likes, mate.
Is there a certain founder, CEO, or investor that you're following closely?
We listened to Cassandra Strovu speak, the CEO of the board. She'll probably not be impressed that I just slaughtered her second name. But she was really inspirational the other day. We listened to her do a talk about how she built proper, how they iterated, how they waited to develop their brand, the new product development. Yeah, she was a real inspiration for me. We took a lot from her as well. Just thanks.
Yeah, we did. I'm following the chat with Archie Hewlett quite closely. Started a brand with Duke and Dexter. And I think it's a relatively interesting story because they took a long time for their sort of explosion to happen. I think they've been going for nearly 7, maybe longer years. And it's only in the last sort of 12 to 18 months that things have really taken a turn for them, and now they're absolutely killing it. Yeah. So quite an interesting lesson in sort of understanding that things take a bit of time, and like it takes a while for your name to get out there and people to recognize it. So again, survive for long enough. I think that's my takeaway from business, as this really is a game of survival at the end of the day. You can survive for long enough, things will start to happen. Yep. And I do genuinely think it's as simple as that. It's that, how do you survive long enough to get to the point where you make things happen, and you have to do well along that journey to get to that point. But yeah, game of survival, and they're quite a good credit to that.
Yeah, I actually ended up collaborating with Duke and Dexter, Archie's brand, with Snoop Dogg back in 2018. So Liquid Proof was like a footwear protector. That was like our hero product. So we did a care range for Snoop Dogg's new range of Duke and Dexter silk sliders. So Snoop Dogg you could walk around the pool and they wouldn't get ruined. So we did a little collaboration with that. So I know those guys. And to your point there in like staying alive long enough, or, you know, going at it long enough, is that over time you learn new things. You're coming at things with a better approach. You refine it. But also your audience compounds. That's the only real thing that you can take away if you stick at things long enough, or in the same niche for long enough. All of the content you've been putting out, or the lessons, start compounding, and your audience is the only thing that truly compounds. That then, if you then land on something new in that space that you can then articulate clearly and solves a problem for that same audience, then it starts working. You can go again, and it compounds up. And yeah, that's really it, isn't it? Go on. Mate, you guys are you've already answered my question about the favorite failure. I think for me, like the last one that I'd love to, well, two more. So is there a sustainable swap or hack or change that you've made in your life that you can share with us?
I mean, this is very, very basic. So Sam and I, we're not, well, before we started Batch, I certainly wasn't particularly sustainably minded, if I'm totally honest. And I'm arguably, still not. We're all just trying to do better, be more conscious people. Right? We're all aware of the massive environmental crises that are going on, so we can all make micro decisions in our daily lives to be more sustainable, right? So this year I said I wasn't going to do any reusable plastic bottles or my plastic bottles from the supermarket, So that's just a tiny thing that I've been able to implement to just reduce my daily use of plastic. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's just these small things that you can make to daily habits. But this is all water, so really kind of round. They just do recyclable, reusable water bottles. So we use these in the shop, and they're fantastic. And it just gets people thinking about a slightly more conscious way of living their lives.
Cool.
No crazy.
Slightly, yeah, simple.
Right. Yeah, rather than a hack, I guess it's more like a learning or a bit of advice, which is that you don't need to do everything at once. I think people very quickly get overwhelmed with sustainability, and so they then do nothing. Particularly when you talk about fashion, people are like, I don't know how to start. So, or if we quite often relate on what we're doing here to the meat industry, where rather than telling people they have to go vegan now and they can never eat meat again, which is not accessible for most people because they love it or they don't want to be difficult. It's like, why don't you just start to make some better decisions so you can eat less? You go to the butcher more often. And it's the same thing that with our same ethos that we have here. So it's like, rather than everything that you buy now has to be thrifted or sustainable or expensive or whatever it is, it's like, can you supplement something with something more sustainable? So can you buy one of our suits, and if that means that you need to go and buy a t-shirt or a vest from Uniqlo to support that purchase, we've started that change of culture, and then that will start to ripple, and they'll realise that actually this is way better made and it lasts for longer, and they'll want to do more of it. So I think it's just start somewhere, don't worry about doing everything at once, and over time that will happen.
Go on to it. Thank you. Finally, what does kind leadership mean to you both?
On the spot. I think you have to be very self-aware as a leader, right? It's very easy to just be going at 100 miles an hour, not really thinking about yourself or the way that you're behaving. So I think being very conscious of yourself and the way you're feeling and the way that you're projecting yourself on others is probably a very kind way of leading, right?
It's you.
Yeah, I mean, echo what Julian's said. It's very easy to get lost in a little while, but I think what I'd really love to do over time is to inspire other people to start to do things a bit differently. So other business to follow suit, to consider their, how they're impacting the world more deeply, to help other people on that journey. I think it's like being a leader, but being collaborative. We went going without collaborating with lots of people like yourselves and other businesses, and then hope to be able to return that favour over time. I think become hopefully leaders in the States.
Thank you, chaps. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Anyone in the audience want to share a question? Yes, Mike.
I wonder if you would tell us if you have decided to join people or decided not to do people.
Your decision to do people.
Wait, it's on the list.
Yeah. It's his job, isn't it?
It's like a 2-month, 2-founder job to get into place, so we're not quite ready to yet. We've set up our articles of association with the right B Corp wording, and we did our first funding round. We went through that stage, which you get something like 50 points for just from setting it up in that way. So it's ready, it's ticking along. I think if we were to apply for it, we'd be pretty close or there already. It's just a massive, massive job to get it done. And right now we need to focus on survival, and then we can build it to getting to B Corp status. But yeah, I would love to be a B Corp, 100%.
Any other questions? Yes.
So any of the challenges that adding online customer acquisition? Like, you willing to share what's working for you, what the lessons that you've learned, even into it, so you know, on that thing.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So what have we done that is perhaps cutting through the noise on social media? What's working for us? Collaboration. We touched on it earlier, and I'll go into it in a little bit more detail, but we've created this mini docu-series where we shine a light on aspirational creatives that have a pretty engaged following that we're proud to align Batch with. So we started off with a chef called Gaz Oakley, who's a vegan chef, has his own homestead in Wales. We went out and visited him. We filmed a video interviewing him in a Batch suit, in the sage green suit, on his farm, highlighting his work, but subtly introducing Batch as a brand. We then did Jordan McCamber, who's an up-and-coming music artist, quite big in London. He talked about his music. We've now done one with a tattoo artist, and we've got one with an artist called Kelly on Thursday, I believe. So I think that sort of authentic collaboration with micro influencers who perhaps aren't currently getting peppered by brands to collaborate with is certainly working very well for us. LinkedIn is another simple one. The reach on LinkedIn relative to other platforms, if you do a good post, is exponential.
You also doing a bit of cold DMs.
Yeah, we get stuck in. You can't be afraid. Just try lots of different things. Lots of different things work. I mean, we've been hesitant in the past to spend lots of money on paid media, and because it's very difficult. You need a big budget for it to work properly. We've started spending a little bit more on it now, but it's just coming up with authentic and you just thinking outside the box, being as creative as possible. What's going to cut through the noise constantly? Ultimately, having this physical space is huge for us. We're fortunate enough to have had 2 floors, and as Jana said, we built a speakeasy bar downstairs. So just doing cool shit is really important for cutting through the noise. You've got to be doing stuff that other people aren't really.
I echo that, like leveraging other people's audiences that you know will potentially like what you do. If you can align with that person, works wonderfully. Any other questions? Yes.
When we share the sustainability message, it's implicit that we are discussing the environment. How do you consider also the social part of it, and how do you create it?
I think communicating sustainability is such an interesting one. From my personal experience, where it goes wrong is people forget to talk about why their product's better. They just talk about the fact that it's more sustainable. And more often than not, everything that you see as sustainable has a benefit to it outside of just being sustainable. So if you can focus in on that and explain why that's a benefit. So like, for example, for us, yes, you have to wait 8 weeks for it to be made. Not only is that sustainable, but you get a much higher quality garment for less, because you're not having to pay for wastage, not having to store stock. You also get this 8-week experience where we'll show you who's making it and how it's made, so it's more of an experiential thing than just a shopping experience. We even just those 2 things take it from this is why it's better, this way you get high quality for less, this cool experience, over just if you don't do this, then it's really bad for the planet. So if you can fit those 2 things together and work out what those key benefits are that make it more elite to another product that's not sustainable, I think that's a really key way to go about it, to actually make a difference in the consumer's mind, which then, fed back into that market testing that you did, where people are more worried about price, quality, speed of delivery, customer service than they are about the sustainability when it actually comes to making the purchase decision.
So they go in and share the content of their garment workers. So they go into Portugal, seen their videos, they're there in the factories, you get to see the people that, they're super happy. You actually physically see it rather than then go, where we do this, and they actually show, which is really, really something new that I'm seeing. I mean, Sheen set up tried to show some fake factory where they send influencers over. I think we all saw that. Let's not give them the space, but that didn't work for them because they did it in an inauthentic way. I think we had one there, and then I'll come to you. Yes.
That quote about the sustainability of any hat being processed. Is there any specific way you guys are thinking about capture care instead of the light of the artists and all the customer in their journey is all happens?
Yeah, we have a fantastic partnership with a brand called Sojo, who do alterations and repairs. So they kind of like the delivery of alterations and repairs. So how that works is from a batch perspective, when you check out for a batch suit, you can add Sojo fit assurance. So when it arrives with you, if it doesn't quite fit perfectly, we'll cover 50% of your alterations. somebody will come to your house, pick up your suit, take it away, alter it, and bring it back. The whole trying to relove, repair, reuse your garments is a huge message. And I think like secondhand, I love thrifting, secondhand clothes, finding new ways to wear old clothes, getting old clothes repaired is a huge part of being more sustainable. Like, yes, making stuff to order is sustainable. There are lots of different ways to be sustainable. So yeah, the Sojo partnership is how we do that.
Also, just to add to that, I think right from when we first started, the material that we picked a 98% cotton and 2% elastic. And when we initially chose it, people came at us, they're like, that's now not recyclable. We looked at each other and like, why are we making clothes that need to be recyclable? As soon as you add elastic, it's much more durable, don't get baggy knees, it's not going to rip as easily. So, shut up with your greenwashing. We go and choose this material to make sure that it lasts for a long time, rather than worry about recycling clothes, which shouldn't mean, but anyway.
Interesting. There's a wave of, I think it was the BBC or there's a review recently where they were like, those bins that you see in a lot of the fashion shops where they're saying it's recycled, reused. They actually did a little bit of analysis and they still end up in landfill or somewhere on the other side of the world, like even when they say it's recycled. So I like how you guys have kind of approached things and been like, well, you've considered it, right? You would have gone like full cotton if it actually made sense for the business and customer lifetime, but they would end up with a less quality garment that would probably ruin them. So there had to be more waste. So I like how you've kind of approached that. Yes, you had a question.
So I just want to ask you about, for example, like, did you have a mentor that told you when you started with business, like, you did any insights or accelerated for at that what you there in that and I mean
So just to repeat that question, do you have mentors, coaches, advisors that supported you through your journey?
Not necessarily at the very start. We've definitely taken on the advice of a lot of different people along the way, though. We did a NatWest Accelerator program, which was useful to a certain extent, more predominantly for meeting people that you can work with and support your network. We're fortunate to have, to be fair, in the grand scheme of things, quite limited experience relative to others, but very unique experiences working for startups that have scaled quite quickly. So we both had that experience and we both have complementary skill sets. I think one thing that I would always advise people is try and find a decent co-founder if you're setting up a business that has complementary skill set to yours, because then you're halving your workload essentially. So yeah, I think we take as much advice as we can with Belbot. We're fortunate to have a nice cluster of strategic angels that are supporting us that can add value here and there. And from a collaboration perspective, we take every conversation that we can have super seriously and take on board the advice and the respect of a lot of different people, which I think.
Yeah, we sit down with as many people as we can. Usually there's a slightly ulterior motive that we want to work with them in some way, shape or form. But it always works well because you've got someone that's doing something different to you and you can have a coffee is a great thing about having a space as well. Facilitates that a lot more easily. So you can say, come down here, we've got coffee and we're going to make you try on a suit and simultaneously. But we try and, I think you can't have too much advice really, as long as you go into it knowing that you don't have to take the advice. I think people get tripped up sometimes, but everyone has an opinion on everything. You know your business far better than anyone else does. So listen to it, but sometimes it's not about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Well, firstly, the reason we are all here today, Kind Community is being hosted here today is because of their approach. Like, they reached out to me personally on LinkedIn. We built a relationship and we just built a relationship from there. I was like, yeah, these guys are super cool. Helped them out a little bit, pointed them in a few directions. And I was like, one point we're going to have Kind Community Breakfast Club here in this space. And here we are today. So that's all come from them not just asking the odd question, can you give us a bit of advice from that? There's approach to like winning someone over. It's like a lot of honey, like be like, it's really nice. I love, like, they picked me up massively before. And then was like, could you give us a bit of advice around X, Y, Z? And then it flows a lot nicer. And that also works when you're approaching investors, I found as well. Like, I think your approach was like, let's approach as an advisor. Let's like, can we get your opinion on this? Oh, and by the way, like, if you want, you could give us some money.
That's great.
Yeah, to
No one likes to be sold to, though, really. And that's what raised investment is. But asking for advice is a good entry point to that. because you also we need advice. Everyone needs advice. Yeah. And if someone likes you enough and they've got some money sitting around, and they might give you a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you touched on that a bit, or they would have been what I call the desires is actually that no power magic and sustaining that way forward. So what are your share on how to build that foundation is there and what business us?
How do you find a good co-founder, and how have we found each other over the year working till nearly 2 years of working together? We've been very lucky. We get along very well. We probably had 1 or 2 spats in our time. It's mostly because Julian's very good at dealing with me. So he just I'm quite stubborn. He'll just let me get on with it and then approach it at another time and calm down a bit. But no, generally we flow pretty well together and feed and support each other's ideas. And if we have a disagreement in an idea, it doesn't last for too long. We'll actually like that way forwards.
It's coming back to that as being super self-aware of how you're feeling and the way you're behaving, and also just be conscious of what your other co-founder doesn't like to do or the jobs they don't particularly want to do. Swallowing frogs for each other makes life a lot easier.
I love that. Swallowing frogs for each other. And you said at the beginning when you was like, your operational background, all this and that, and you were like, yeah, that's the shit I don't want to do. Which is great. That complementary skill set, which I think is fantastic. Yes, we had another question back.
Yeah, so the question is, do we use our brand as a leadership in the space for creating wider change amongst sustainability? G might have a different answer, but my answer to that is no, not as the brand, because I think you can alienate yourself sometimes. Our vision with the brand is to lead by example. And so if you look along even just this street, which has got loads of retail shops on it, the smallest discount that I've seen this summer is 50% off.
50.
50%.
It was the smallest. It was the smallest. Wow.
Urban Outfitters has got 75% off. You just can't run a business like that, and that highlights back to the fact that people have created too much style, too many styles. They can't sell it because people are being much more selective with their cash at the moment. So what's that? You cannot run a business like that. It's going to go bust eventually. And we sit here, we don't offer any discounts. That was a big part of our brand from the start. We sometimes offer some cash off incentives, but never a discount, as it were. So like on our opening weekend, we sent, the first 100 customers get 50 quid off their suit as a way of driving people into the shop. But there's no doubt that people will be looking around here and wondering why we can do what we do without a discounting and still sell stuff. So I think that's the way that we'll make impact for other fashion brands, because they just will have no choice eventually. But then we use our own personal voices to be those advocates, those campaigners. Like you said, we do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I think people forget that LinkedIn is also a business-to-consumer platform. It's seen as a business-to-business, but all of your consumers are probably also on LinkedIn. So it's a great opportunity to become sort of leaders in the space and whatever you're doing, create great content. But yeah, it's that balance between being super preachy, which some people hate and turn off to, and being a leader in the space and someone to look up to. So yeah, I think finding that balance is always difficult. There's probably more we could do personally, but yeah, building up to it.
Anything to ask?
Pick your battles. There's loads of different ways you can be sustainable. We've picked only producing exactly what's necessary, and from a scaling perspective, if we can prove that concept and flip the script on the way that we consume fashion, we're kind of doing that, right?
Got time? Why did you decide to produce in Portugal rather than the UK?
We couldn't really get taken too seriously by British manufacturers when we first started. They're also quite full.
Any of it?
Yeah, there aren't that many of them. Portugal has a very rich textile history, fantastic family-run factories that have been around for a long time with very skilled workers, with fantastic working conditions, as close to the UK as possible, arguably slightly more sexy. That being said, now that we're in a position, I think one big learning for me is we want to be as close to our supply chain as possible and as close to our product as possible, especially as when we're making them in batches. They need to be perfect. People have waited for it. We want to be as close to the product as possible. So we are exploring opportunities to create close to home. But at the moment, Portugal's been fantastic. It's a great place. We've got a fantastic relationship with our manufacturer for such a small new brand, and they look after us very well. And they've got a very refreshing perspective on new business ideas, new models. The way of operating with us currently isn't something that they've done before, and they manufacture for Ralph Lauren and Massimo Dutti, so we're very well looked after.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam, Julian, for sharing your amazing story in Batch London. Yeah, round of applause, please. Thank you so much.